Meteor Maker is the newest synchronous PvP game by Behaviour, the same people behind Dead by Daylight. It's a game about raiding other players' outposts that are built with the specific goal of killing you as much as possible, and in turn you'll also have to build your own outposts to extract additional resources. It is set in a pretty bleak post-apocalyptic setting in which a player in the role of the custodian needs to gather genetic material in order to evolve the Chimera, which will presumably lead to the development of something that will grant humanity immunity from whatever it is that is killing them off. There's not much story-wise to go on right now, but I find myself quite entertained by the setting, the little tidbits of information you can gather from the small amount of dialogues and the sci-fi body horror as designed from both the guard and the Chimera. To progress in the game, you'll need to gather genetic material, but how do you gather the genetic material? Like I mentioned previously, this can be done by building outposts to extract the genmat, letting you gather the precious material even when outside the game, or by raiding other players' outposts to steal their genmat instead. I think it's important to note right away that, in what I consider to be a very smart decision, you do not lose anything when a player steals your genmat unless you put your outpost in overdrive, an activation mode that is really only useful in certain cases as it burns through your outpost faster. Outposts are temporary, while I'm on the subject, only valid while there's resource to be extracted. If your outpost do well enough, mostly gauged by the amount of kills it gets, you can prestige your outpost up to level 10 to get more resource out of it, after which you'll still need to retire the outpost. You can always put it in social if you're attached to it. Genmat is a primary resource for progression. However, there's a handful of other resources to gather as well that allow the development of new equipment for raiding, as well as traps and guards for protecting outposts. As of now, developing new gear is the primary incentive driving the gameplay loop. Evolving the Chimera does very little more than giving you some positive reinforcement. The Chimera has big bomb energy. It's admittedly a bit on the grindy side, but there's already a good chunk of unlockables to motivate you, ranging from new weapons to guard, suit, consumable equipment, traps, and even mods that affect the behavior of traps and guards. The most interesting aspect of the progression is that from the get-go you already have pretty much everything you need to both build and raid successfully. The grappling hook allows for fast evasion, the starting sword is able to parry projectile including bombs, and the starting range weapon can destroy traps and armor. The new equipment will open new strategies. For instance, the unlockable range weapon has more starting ammo, making it better suited for outposts relying on a large quantity of guards, which sometimes flies, but they cannot bust traps, making it completely useless in an outpost made entirely of traps. There isn't really a right or wrong answer when it comes to the equipment, and I have found the default loadout to be the most reliable, with the possibility of both parrying and destroying traps at a range. I've also heard people saying that the starting loadout is completely pointless, so to each their own. You can also pick up on gameplay mechanics and become better at them. And that's gonna open up new tactics to tackle the outposts. Since trap and guards take damage from everything, whether it comes from the raider or not, you'll often be able to use the outpost design to your advantage. Yeah, a bomb shoot is pretty lethal when it surprises you, but it also destroys pretty much everything in the room. Guard can kill each other, you can use that. Traps can even parry each other. If you engage with the outpost building, you'll also pick up on some quirk and develop a certain sense about traps. Using the second wind mod, traps can appear after the raider pick up the genmat. However, the builder cannot put a trap on the same space as a decal or props. A wall with a props or a decal is safe then, but a blank space between props has the potential of spawning a trap later. In the same vein, an overwhelming amount of traps on the way mean the builder probably didn't have much resource left for the way out, meaning the way out is potentially safe. Then there's a certain chemistry to learn between player actions and trap placement. For example, the only way to get ammo is to pick up the projectile you've already shot. Trick a player into shooting a guard in front of the corrosive cube, and there you go, the player either accepts they lost a projectile or they'll die trying to get it back. Now this is where the fun begins, because at its art, Meteor Maker is a game both about tricking people and being wise enough to avoid getting tricked. It's a game all about understanding human behavior and exploiting that knowledge. Using the replay feature, you can watch player attempt to raid your outpost. This isn't just for fun, this is data gathering. What kind of playstyles do players have? Some rush through the outpost, or hold W if you will, while others are more methodical, play the game the same way they would play the original Rainbow Six. You have to account for both playstyle, what's the most used equipment. The kill bugs, as they call them, are pretty effective until you find a player equipped with a shield. then it doesn't do jack shit. What traps get to them? How do they try to avoid those traps? You can weaponize that knowledge to optimize the outposts, kill more. Players assume the trap will only shoot once, modded to make it shoot twice. That's gonna surprise them. Backstep to avoid projectile? Surprise, it's a homing projectile. Look at this. I got a monster close it. The wall disappears when the player gets close, revealing a very angry armored guard. Not really sure why, but a lot of players are curious. They explore the closet. There's nothing there. The genmat is right next to it. Perfect occasion for a pitfall. They'll never see it coming. They'll die for nothing. You can use that same knowledge to predict trap placement and other players' outposts. Oh, are they gonna try to get you? What is that builder's favorite trap? Some of them use always the same trap. It becomes very predictable. What kind of behavior are they expecting from you? How can you counter this? Bet they don't expect you to stick to the ceiling like Spider-Man style. That will show them. This is what makes Meteor Maker truly special and why I think it has unbounded potential. It'll all come down to player psychology. It's like a fighting game. It's still pretty early for the game, however, it's a little bit light on content for a starter and the concept doesn't really seem to get across to everyone. While the promotional material makes it pretty damn clear that this is supposed to be a brutal game, it seems like a lot of players are under the impression that this is supposed to be a Mario Maker type game where the point is to make entertaining and fun level. Hell, that's even how game ranks before you pitch the game, but as it stands, it's not really built to support that. It creates a bit of a nasty situation where player won't give you a calling because your outpost is too hard, for instance. Despite that, everything in the game propose that this is the entire objective. If you go visit the subreddit for the game, which you should never do, never spend time on Reddit, people recommend you to avoid short harvester path, because that indicates a kill box, but a long harvester path is also to be avoided, because that's a maze. So you can't win there. There's been a lot of modern FPS that tried to do a Mario Maker-esque experience, but never gained traction despite being excellent in their own right. For example, Doom Snap Map, Far Cry Arcade, or even Gunscape. I bet you never heard of that one. That was pretty fun, actually. The thing is, your average player, they're not very good at level design. I don't think that's a huge secret. That's what Mario Maker proved. As much as there's excellent fun 2D Mario level to be played as Mario Maker, there's just as much bad ones. And that's not just for people, not giving effort. Some of them give it a fair shake and it just doesn't end up being an entertaining level. I think that's why most of those games fails, and when we're talking about doing a FPS Mario Maker, we're talking about designing for a 3D space, not a 2D space. That's even harder. Plus, I think it's important to precise that I actually believe the game is very sided towards the raider. Once you fully utilize that toolkit, there's not much outpost that can stop you, no matter what. Still, there's a social raid feature that doesn't count for progression, and I think if it was implemented well enough, it could offer the experience that casual players are looking for while keeping their normal ranked raid in line with the PvP experience. Maybe we could have a midpoint where rank is dedicated to the PvP. And then social, you can make whatever you want. But as it stands, if you were to go for a Mario Maker type experience, the game's not really built for it. It doesn't have enough assets, it doesn't have enough visual variety, there's not that much you can do level design wise to put gimmicks in it. I would still recommend the game, however I would also recommend you to wait a little bit to see where the game is going. Because if you buy it right now, it's not guaranteed that the reason you're buying the game for, whether it's the PvP or the Mario Maker thing, it's not guaranteed that it's still gonna be moving toward that direction in a couple of months. So I would tell you, it's fun, it's half price, it's not that expensive. It's available on pretty much everything except the Switch. It runs on a toaster, it runs great on Steam Deck, it's free on PS Plus. Wait a little bit and then give it a shot. See if the game match what you want. Because as it stands right now, the community is a little bit in a rift onto where the game should go. And I think Behaviour is gonna have to call the shots. But if you buy it right now and they change the game toward the direction that you didn't want it to, you're gonna end up being disappointed.